Climate events of recent times have brought a stark realization to us as artists and viewers, forcing us to confront the harsh realities of humankind's impact on the planet. This series of work serves as a poignant reminder of the blackout we experience regarding the urgent need to address the problems that contribute to a steadily warming planet and the dire consequences that result. Hello, everyone. My name is Eamonn Shanahan, and I am the artistic director of Nua Collective, and I'm delighted to present a very special podcast about our upcoming international tour of Blackout. And Blackout is our very first physical exhibition that is going to many different locations across the world. But first, we are going to Latvia, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But first, just a little introduction about what this exhibition is and where we come from and how we've made this happen. So scattered around the world, Nua Collective are a group of professional visual artists that collaborate together to create, to share, and to support one another in their journey as artists. Blackout, as I said, marks our very first physical exhibition, and that's incredibly exciting for us. And being in our third year of virtual showcases, where we've done so many different concepts and explored so many different concepts already, it's been really exciting to know that we will have the work that we've been working on and developing together in a physical space for the first time, and that's really exciting. So, featuring 13 artists of the 20 Nua Collective artists that we have, this exhibition features a line-up print that is unique in their creation and processing, and they have already traveled the globe. And together, what we are doing is making an inquiry about our climate catastrophe and the energy crisis that we continue to face. So for this podcast, I'm going to introduce you to a number of the participating artists that are involved in Blackout, and I'm very excited to welcome them all to share their journey through the Blackout process and how they felt it has changed them as artists, and also how it has impacted their own artistic journey and their own artistic practice. But first, I'm going to welcome to this podcast Mr. Robert Jackson, who comes from Ireland, but is living in Scotland. And we are delighted to have Rob involved in the collective. You probably heard from him in many of the other podcasts that we have produced, and also through the work that he has shared across our platform over the last 3 years. He's an inaugural member. But Rob came to me with this idea about a touring print package that we could put together, and that's really how it all stemmed. So welcome, Rob. Rob, how are you doing?
Great, thank you. Thanks, Eamonn.
Rob, you helm in Scotland right now, but you do have quite an Irish connection. How is that?
Yeah, so I grew up, spent probably most of my young life in Ireland, dropping in and out, going to London sometimes, and eventually studied printmaking in NCAD in Dublin, as well as a course in Waterford as well too for a year. So yeah, very strong, and went to school in Ireland too. So very strong connections to Ireland. Still have family all there as well.
Very good. So you're always visiting or checking it out. Very good. So this project Blackout, I suppose, what made you think of doing it in this way? What was the spark?
Well, I guess, being from a printmaking background, I find it's really quite it's always a very collaborative process, printmaking, in that you're learning from other printmakers. You tend to be in a print studio with other people and discussing ideas and concepts. And I suppose, us in the collective, it gave us an opportunity to address our first physical exhibition, which is very exciting. And it gave us an opportunity to collectively address the topic of blackout, which we all experience. I'm in Scotland. We get letters through the door, several times before winter, warning us that a blackout is increasingly possible. And obviously, we're all seeing what's happening on the news around the world at the moment too. So it's really quite a relevant topic, I believe, at this time, and it's something that affects us all and could get worse. And I felt, with my love of printmaking and my love of digital technologies, a combination of the two was possibly an interesting route to try and explore this. So over in Scotland here, I teach students how to use digital technologies within their art practice and design practice. So things like 3D printing and laser cutting and 3D scanning and things like that. But a lovely aspect of what I've learned through this technology is that it interrelates with traditional technologies really quite in really quite exciting ways. So it sort of increases possibilities within traditional printing techniques that we couldn't have done before. I guess the beauty of this project was it just allowed me to explore these interests with my fellow collective artists and try and address this topic.
I've already mentioned that we're quite scattered afar. We're all over the world, really. We've got members in the US, we've members in Europe, and we've members in Ireland, obviously, and they're dotted around the world. And I suppose in this process and this collaboration that you've just spoke of, this whole project really has been a massive collaboration. It has, from its very start, concept idea where we discussed what the concept would be and what we would focus on and coming up with what we felt was really worth exploring, as to the very making of the pieces. This process has been entirely collaborative. But in saying that, it has also traveled very far already. So could you describe a little bit about the kind of making process from concept through to production and how that has happened, and maybe talk a little bit about the print making process insofar as the different technologies that you spoke of?
Yep, sure. We initially set up with a series of really interesting meetings like this on via Zoom, some in America, some in Ireland, some in Scotland, in Latvia, all sorts of places, to discuss themes that were relevant. And after we came upon the idea of Blackout, you quite rightly set a deadline for people to apply with their works, and then that sort of pressured us, I guess, into generating imagery that might be suitable for this. And I guess I set some fairly strict rules, which are kind of interesting. It's interesting to have rules for projects like this. We had a set lino size and a set paper size, and we knew we were just using black ink on white paper, with the opportunity to use a little bit of grayscale, but with an introduction of a dot in it. So I'll chat about that in a little while. But that changes inevitably how people's initial image would likely look as the end product. And so what the fellow artists in Nua, what we all did really was we beetled away and started coming up with ideas, throwing them into group chat and then bouncing things back until each artist settled on an image, and then everyone emailed their image to me here in Scotland, where I took those images, prepped them a little bit, and got them ready to laser engrave into very traditional lino. So the lino that you'd use in school or college with a woven back, a grey lino, is fantastic for laser engraving and laser cutting. And then that led to us having these beautiful printmaking blocks that then can be traditionally inked up as a traditional lino. And then I've subsequently printed on this gorgeous Colombian press, which is from the 1800s. Who knows what this thing has printed over the years, and remarkable that it's sort of helped connect us, and the laser also, that this sort of new technology has helped connect us and our practice and our thoughts on this theme of Blackout in a new way, which is quite exciting for me.
That's really interesting, and the buzzword that I'm kind of picking up from that, what you've just said, is the connection. And I think if there's anything that Nua Collective has done, it has connected us all as artists. And this process, I think, has connected us to another level by means of having something physically made together. And we thank you sincerely, Rob, for the amount of effort that you've done in making that happen and making these physical pieces come to life from the 13 artists that are involved. Each of them brought their own ideas, their own concepts, their own pieces as a reflection on the concept that we discussed. And what we made was something that has become connected as an entire group in a way that could never be made again, really, because of the different elements that it required to make that happen and to fulfill it. I just feel that the different processes that you've spoken about between the Colombian printing press to the laser cutting machine, and then back to that traditional lineup of print, it's really great to see how that connects too, and how that has really made this whole process so organic and yet so technological as well. And so we're talking modern and we're talking contemporary, but also very traditional, and having those styles work together is just really exciting. So Rob, you have, like, I mean, even the concept that we were talking, if we to go back a little bit back to the concept, and we're looking at the energy crisis, and we're looking at the idea of how my power, especially, I suppose, has been something that has been becoming very costly, and we're trying to sustain a very inflating world financially, and it's become very difficult. The footprint that we have used when it comes to, between that and climate change, the footprint that we have used in even getting the work to you has been already quite large, and now we're touring the world with this collection of work and increasing that footprint again. How do you feel that is in contradictory to our concept?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a contradictory, and it's also, you know, it's quite interesting thinking about the whole process and thinking, you know, without electricity, without the laser cutter, without technology to communicate with each other, that this wouldn't have taken place. And I agree that the footprint is always a worry and a consideration for something like this, that, you know, we are using more energy, the print is flying on a post plane somewhere else, or a cross land somewhere else. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's probably trying to address a fairly important topic, albeit leaving its little footprint behind. Whereas in contrast to the footprints other people leave behind around the world, you know, it's quite minimal. So hopefully, I think you always have to allow for a little bit to then address that further, if that makes some sense. But yeah, it's challenging a little bit.
I think that's a really good conversation starter to bring in our other artists that we have with us this evening. And we have Caoimhe Heaney, we have Christina Geoghegan, and we have Carol Healy. What is your response to that idea of the challenge between how we're trying to promote climate change, and yet we are making a footprint that is maybe somewhat contrary to that?
I think, like, the footprint that we have been using to fly, you know, to just post this post going every day. But there was great awareness, you know, it made me look at, you know, instead of just putting something in the post and not thinking about it, because we're looking at the subject of, you know, the climate change and all the effects that everything that causes carbon emissions. And the conversation we're having now, so it's made me more aware of it. And today, I mean, to avoid I think it's very hard to avoid using to have, you know, it's a tiny footprint, say, yeah. So and all in the good name as well, and bringing awareness. And it certainly made me think about you know, what I'm using up in my daily, you know, in my studio as well, and just in daily life. You know, I think we're all trying, but we all need to be reminded, like, an awful lot, because I think we just take it so much for granted. You know, we have everything at the flick of a switch. Everything is instant, and coming up to Christmas as it is now, there is an amount of boxes and parcels, you know, going across the sky. It's just you know, so hopefully this is actually coming in at a good time of the year as well, just for people to maybe just pause and become aware of the effects of, and I'm guilty of it myself, of making orders from things, you know, for something that you want that's on the other side of the world and is traveling over, and really, how much did you need that, you know, where you're kind of, you know, buy secondhand, buy art. You can never go wrong. But yeah, just it's a conversation, I think, because somehow I know myself that I can easily get into the momentum of just doing everything and not thinking too much about it.
You're absolutely right. We're making a little mark, but for a vast reason, for a big reason, and hopefully for a big reach, so that we can share what we've learned in understanding our climate crisis and understanding the energy catastrophe that we're dealing with, to understand it just a little bit more, so that we can be a little bit more proactive in how we deal with things. Christina, in the kind of overall concept that we're looking at and what we've discussed over the last couple of weeks, months even, is there anything really that struck with you that has been instrumental to what you've made for this?
Yes, and I'd follow on Carol's point there. It's kind of about basically being able to tell the woods from the trees, and while we're cognizant of the impact of what this exhibition has as it travels, at the same time, us even being conscious of it, we're critiquing ourselves, and the critic in a way is kind of the true optimist, because they believe things can be better. It means optimism, but and at the same time, it's important to create the environment you want to live in through your actions.
Absolutely. Caoimhe, have you anything to add to that?
I agree with everyone and what they said, and it totally even like kind of made the 13 of us look at things slightly differently, and maybe even people we spoke to. So hopefully those little things outweigh our impact. And even though like we are obviously sending things across the world, it's such a small impact compared, especially nowadays, to at Christmas, when you think people will buy things, like Carol's saying, from America. Even actually some people, like, I send online orders, and in a shop people get them delivered and they're 20 minutes down the road, where you could walk and go get them. So hopefully it will bring awareness to those things of like, let's not add this to the postman, and give yourself a little bit less of a carbon footprint that way, because even the minimal things that you can do make a huge difference if everyone does them. And like even the materials we're using, like, okay, most of us send things digitally, so there's not too much of a footprint there. To Rob made them, and then the boxes, like, they're made out of cardboard, and he engraved on top of them, but it's plain cardboard that can be recycled so easily. There's no paint, there's no added plastics on it or anything like that. So we really are trying our best, I think.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. I think just to kind of pick up on what you said there, and it links back a little bit to what Rob is speaking about in again, back to the process of this whole exhibition. These are in themselves monoprints, and we're all in black and white as a play on that aesthetic to continue that through the entire campaign. But bringing it back to the simplicity of things, I think, is a really base theme that's going through this, insofar as we're looking at a monochromatic way of things being in black and white. And this whole concept is black and white, insofar as the concept we're trying to get across and the challenge that we're trying to overcome is very simple. We need to make a change. And it's that black and white. And so fundamentally, do you feel that even some of them, like, for example, Paul McMahon's work was an initial color painting. It was fully color. There was lots of different tones, quite vibrant in color. But his work that was changed to black and white as a very intentional move, I think really brought us back to looking at just the shape, looking at the structure, looking at the overall construction of the piece, and how he came to build that from a practical and mechanical point of view. How do you feel that has influenced the concept?
Well, I think just to pick up on Paul's, you're mentioning Paul, because I find that one quite interesting too, because it almost strips away the indulgence of color, that it simplifies things back to its core shapes, as you say. And I find Paul's really hit that one quite well, because you can imagine his image is vibrant, and his paintings usually are very vibrant and colorful. And it's kind of like when, as Carol and Caoimhe said, that it's kind of like when people are almost buying too much and absorbing too much, that, taking on too much, to actually tear that away from you makes a pretty good point, which is, I think he hit it quite well with that one.
Definitely. I think that kind of leads us quite nicely into just our individual works themselves. And I'd love to kind of talk to you each about what you brought to your work that made it so responsive to the overall concept. So I'm going to start with Christina. Christina, tell us a little bit about what made you come to provide this piece of work, to make this piece of work.
Thanks, Eamon. The work is essentially a landscape. It's a landscape piece, a spray paint, which is looking at the way you can use nature to shape nature and create a message of nature in a way. It's using the elements, the inclement and the wind and the rain to shape the spray paint in the moment. So you're, in a sense, while we, in a way, it's really about just, it's capturing the moment and kind of trying to communicate the intangible aspect of nature, the momentary, the vulnerable, the fragility, but also the strength of nature, because it's entirely influencing the shape, and yet at the same time it is entirely momentary.
I think that's really interesting, because what Caoimhe captures in her work as well is quite momentary, but yet still has its fun at the time, insofar like that piece in its Caoimhe, and I'm sure you won't mind me discussing this, that the Caoimhe's piece depicts a vegetable and the close-up photography of that vegetable, and how that has a lifespan, but yet you depicted a moment in time, much like what Christina has done. Caoimhe, what could you tell us a little bit about your work?
Well, it started out that I was completely didn't know what to do. So I was Googling like how, like, I know we depend on electricity for every day, but I kind of wanted to bring it back to its simplest form. Like, I don't think we think, but I didn't think about our food depends on electricity. Even in the harvesting, the growing, nowadays everything is we use electricity, we use fossil fuels, all these things through farming, and I kind of just forgot about that. You know, I was like, oh, it's a cabbage, you get it from the ground, it's so natural. But we've made these processes, like, we're so inundated with having to use electricity and other forms of things that we like. It should be simple, you should be able just to grow something, but we don't do it that way anymore. And a lot of things can be like, even Carol was saying it's the last day about my work, like, it brings up the question of genetically modifying food as well, and putting stabilizers in there to keep things lasting. So when we have something so natural, it's gonna wither away really quickly. If we don't have fridges and freezers, we're gonna waste a load of our food, and we do waste a load of our food. Without electricity and like all the things that we have now, we have so much wastage that it's inconceivable. And then there's people in other parts of the world that don't have the food. So, like, when we have these rolling blackouts, our fridges and freezers, like, if it's going to be so long, are we just going to be wasting food? And it's such a precious resource that we all need. And yeah, it is a moment in time because it's good for that time, and then it's going to go.
No, I think that you've really hit that home, and so how far stretched that this concept can go, and how important that this crisis is, that it's expanding to every element of our lives. It's not just about the core element of electricity and the fact that the power lines are not working. It's how the effects of that can come through to our daily lives. Robert, the title of your work, Glitch, it has that kind of that onomatopoeia to that idea of electricity and the static on a TV, or something that is about to kind of distort. And I think it kind of similar to like the whole idea of what we're talking about, in that everything is distorting and we need to figure out how to kind of bring that back together. But tell us about your kind of interpretation of it.
Well, I guess that's sort of a key element. You know, I was kind of thinking on the front, kind of like Caoimhe, that it's the simple things that will catch us first. And you know, as the blackout, or as blackouts come up here anyway in Scotland, usually what happens is you get this little flicker, and the TV or the computer just cuts out briefly, and it changes, the image changes and flicks, and then it comes back on again. So I think the only time that we will initially begin to feel it is when we start losing access to this, overabundance of entertainment, this technology that we use so regularly. I mean, if my screen glitches out now, we're scuppered a little bit. But I try to sort of address that by having this figure that's deteriorating and is broken. And during the process of laser cutting, I started moving the lino around within the laser cutter to try and break the image up. But then on the left-hand side, I left a painting of the sky and the horizon as a constant without breaking it. Because, no matter what happens to us and no matter what happens to our TV channel, the world will keep rolling on almost, that there will always be a constant, there will always be a sunset and a sunrise, and that we are fleeting as well too. And our moments here are quite fleeting. So that's kind of the angle I try to take on it.
I know. I think you say sky, and I think like space, and we think like and the space-time continuum and all of that, and how like we are only momentarily on this planet, and like I think all three of you have just kind of connected that in some way. And Carol, you don't do it any less with your satellite piece. Carol, tell us about your piece.
My piece was really different from what I usually work at, because usually my drawings will come from my real life experience in the place, or something from myself anyway. Whereas with this concept, I don't know, I was typically scrolling on my phone and I came across I think it was National Geographic, their Instagram page. And I just saw this, it looked like a gorgeous kind of, a dark night with stars in the sky. But then I noticed that the stars, I thought it was photoshopped or something. I thought it was fake. And it was it was a perfect line of stars going across the screen. So I thought I'd read what is this? And I thought it was fake, but it was National Geographic, and I always trust them. But it was actually a photographer called Babak Tafreshki, and he is a photographer and he makes videos as well. And he was actually in a national park in California, and he was trying to capture these big-eared bats, and they make clicking noises at nighttime. So he was in this beautiful place in California, and as he was setting up to make the video, this it was a line of satellites, the SpaceX or whatever they're called, the Starlink satellites that were going past. So and I just thought, oh my goodness. And he kind of described it as they photobombed his photograph, and then I thought, gosh almighty, is there anywhere on this planet that is not being interfered with by us? We are really, and in one case we're amazing creative people making everything, but and I was thinking about the dark skies, but also thinking that by reading about this and learning more about it, that those launches that took place for the satellites to go up and orbit, and then it passed over Ireland and people saw them, but every time they're launched, there is black carbon emitted, which is really not good for our climate. And you kind of think, well, why are they doing this? And it comes back to all of us and our absolute need for the internet, and that's the satellites are there, we're consuming so much again that this is the way it goes. And of course it's a big business, and there's just so much involved. I think nowadays, like, because of the internet and screens take up so much of our lives, and to have the awareness to see the big picture of it. And the thing with this was the satellites are going to fade away. We could see them for, I think, the first 2 weeks or whatever it was, and then the further that they went into their orbit or wherever they go, they're out of sight. So they were news for a while and then they're gone. And it's very, there wasn't any noise made about, the effects they have on climate change or anything like that. But there's so much going on. And I just had this big thing about a lot of stuff is out of sight and out of mind. But every time we bring up these conversations and use our art to, highlight it, we can make those little changes ourselves. And so I just took a screenshot of the image on my phone, which is something I'd never do when I'm making my own art. But I just thought for this, it made a lot of sense to take the screenshot, and then I did it in pencil. And I kind of love that I could do that, to just draw it in pencil and then send it off to Rob, and he worked his magic, and really lovely. It was really nice to see that. And I just think the connection we've had making the pieces of art and our hands on, they were, and that the really old print machine, and those are the things that I think for our own mental health and well-being, that to have that awareness to maybe switch off the screens and do something with our hands, be in nature, slow down, all the good stuff. It's really good, but we are like moths to the flame with all the shiny bright lights and the colors and all of that, drawing us in. So I think I love the whole theme of the black and white, because black and white is beautiful as well, black and white, and just to quieten down, and it's nourishing for us, I think.
I feel like taking up what you're saying, I feel like taking ourselves away from all of that technology really grounds us. It makes us think about the here and now, the present moment, and making sure that we are conscious about what's happening, so that we can intervene if we need to intervene, and stop the overall intervention that's potentially happening, or interference, should I say, nearly, on what's happening in the world by ourselves. And just to be more conscious about it. I think that's a really strong theme through the whole exhibition, is the interference that we have as humans on the earth and on life. And we see that now so much so in the social world of what's happening politically, between Ukraine and Russia, between what's happening with Hamas, and all of that crisis that extends across the world, and how all of it is actually really quite closely related, and how mass technology is enabling this and making this happen. Without going into that too deeply, do you feel that this exercise per se has opened your eyes up to how we can kind of potentially combat that or create a dialogue about how we can potentially intervene in some way?
I think it highlights the fact that for reflection, and as you say, with technology, and also the mentioning, Carol, of the satellites there, everyone wants to build, but no one wants to maintain. And kind of taking that pause and moment of reflection, there is that calmness, and there's also that calmness before the storm, before we see the impact of our small actions on a larger scale. But it's that liminal space of transition, but we don't really see it coming, and we don't really see it coming until it does impact us, like a glitch in the TV, or multitude of other areas across the planet. And I think it's kind of, it's about applying a process and trusting the process and seeing what happens and what's created from that. And we've done that in the past, negating from the environment, but now we're conscious of it, and we can take those steps, even though we don't see the immediate impact. But we have a goal.
Right, I totally agree. And I think hopefully within even just the 13 artists that we have collaborated with and partnered with, that we collectively have created something and have thought about something, and that will make a change. And just kind of that really nicely organically moves into the next kind of phase of what I wanted to talk about this through this podcast, was just the other artworks that are included. And I'm usually, for these podcasts, these video podcasts, I'll do a bit of a preview of some of the images of the artworks that are involved. I'll give a few teaser images, but you'll have to actually go and see it to see them. And they will be released on the website at www.nuacollective.com once we release the exhibition in Latvia. But let's talk a little bit about some of the other works. So we have, as we said, we have 13 artists. Is there anything that really interests you, even just from observation of being part of the process and seeing how another artist's journey has opened up as a result of this process. Is there anybody that you'd like to kind of speak about?
I love Anne's piece for this one of the fallen tree bark, because at first, I think when I first saw it, I thought it was like the opposite way around, and it was, I think she did like a print of it, was it? Does anyone remember? Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was really beautiful. Like it was the textures of the fallen tree that went onto a power line, and it kind of shows the influence of how nature can fight back as well against or like man-made structures. And but it's just it was a really beautiful but simple piece, and I think Anne is great at capturing those things, isn't she? She just has a really unique way of viewing things, and they're so simple, but they just strike you so like awesomely.
I totally agree with that as well, Caoimhe. I feel like the image looks like it is the inside of a tree, or it's the circles of the tree, the veins, and it shows the years of life that tree has survived, I suppose. And I think that brings us back to the overall Blackout idea of you can survive this length of time until it is the end, and then until the lights go out. As pessimistic as that sounds, it's the reality of it. Rob, is there any other artwork that you feel kind of really speaks to you?
Well, I found it really interesting because I ended up with all these pictures here, but I didn't know anything about them, so I didn't have the written text. And we had our discussions about what some of them may have meant, but really I saw them kind of just as pictures and imagery. And something I found really interesting going through the book, Eamonn, was the text that you put with yours.
Mine.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about your work now is it works in a really interesting, unique combination with text and imagery. And I may have seen totally different worlds occurring in your piece, and then reading your fairly intense almost poem about, you know, what's visualized and going on. I found it really, really exciting to read that, and really sort of beautiful wording along with the imagery. So that was a pleasant surprise for me too, because and that was something that I loved about this process, that I didn't, you know, these things just arrived with me, and I helped process them and bring them alive, and then they've gone back to you, and then we've seen them in a different way.
You've really had the exciting part, though, I think, in seeing the reveal of each of the images as they came out of that lino press, or from the lino press. I really envy that. But just how the whole process came, and it's so visceral, and it's just really, I envy your position there, where you could just, that peel of the paper off the lino block and the reveal of that is just so validating or something. It's so great. Thanks, Rob, and thanks for the kind words. Christina.
I really liked Josh's work, Glitch Line, and just that it can be interpreted from a distance, and also close up. From a distance it looks like a landscape, a reflection in the water, and close up it's a completely different form, and so it takes on a plethora of meanings depending on where you're standing and how you're looking at it. So I liked his work a lot.
And just to kind of add to that as well, Josh's work, quite similarly titled to yours, Rob, in a glitched line. But what's great is the interpretation is quite different. I mean, you can see the glitch in it, but it's just amazing to see the variations of the same. You know, it's just amazing to see how that can happen. And Carol?
I love the Luke Hickey's one called The Dying Embrace. A Dying Embrace. And I was looking at it, and it's just like it's a beautiful image, but it has the circle, which he's talking about, the damage to the sun, the ozone layer, and Earth. But it's just, I love circles, as you know. So
oh no, that Carol.
yeah. So then I was looking at this. Why do I like this? It's a big circle, but it's beautiful, but looking at it scale wise, it could be the Earth, it could be the sun, or it could be a cell under a microscope, you know. It's a very strong image, and black and white is gorgeous, and it really reminds me of science as well. It really does look like And we could look at we could look at everything, like from our bodies to the earth to the sun and everything in the universe, that we are all one. And I love the circle as a symbol for that, and we'll just look after it.
It's funny you say about that, and like that triggers erosion by Maria Markham. She did a piece about the erosion of the earth and about the idea of how that natural destruction has happened. Has anybody kind of picked up on Maria's work on how that is? It's kind of like a diptych almost. There's two pieces on either side.
Yeah. And they also look scientific. To me, it's like a sonogram or something,
Yeah, the harshness of it as
Yeah.
well is lovely, isn't it? It's really gritty looking. Like it reminds me of like the soil, like as if you got it and you put it under like a microscope and you were looking at it. It's that kind of gritty texture is fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny, and that you say sonogram as well, because I'm just looking at it here now and it does look like the internal sonogram of, or is it a sonogram of
Yeah.
a baby, or when you're
Yeah.
that it actually kind of looks like that internal microscopic thing, but then what it actually is, as Caoimhe described, is the soil, the grittiness of the earth. And so this is really interesting how these perspectives can happen, and see how this dialogue is happening. I think this is just what's so exciting about the whole thing, because
Exactly.
how this concept is one singular word in Blackout can really go to so many different extremes and be interpreted in so many different ways by the artist and then by the viewer as well, which is really great. Christina, is there anything else, any other artwork there that really kind of elevated for you?
I'd have to say in probably John's work, John Murray's work, Blackout. It's quite different, but it's it translates that impact and obscurity. You can see the letters, you can't quite read the words, but there's urgency to it, and it's about kind of, I kind of interpret it from the mixed communication. There's all that we're all receiving on a multitude of levels on what's the solution, what's the way forward. And while everyone has the best intentions, intents to rise to the occasion, to an extent we can only fall to the level of our training, and with so many mixed messages out there, it's quite difficult to do that.
Yeah, I also find that painting very loud, and I think that's probably what you're saying there, where there's so many messages and that's what that piece really says. It's very loud. There's a lot going
Very
on.
graphic, isn't it? Like as if it's like a poster is put up and he's torn them apart and put them back together, and like it reminds me a lot of collage. I don't know if that is how he did parts of it, yeah, but that kind of like, it reminds me of a few artists that go around New York and rip off like posters and put them back together, and that kind of tearing and that aggressiveness of it.
It's almost like a surface of shattering ice as well too. It's got all sorts of visual references in there. It's lovely.
And Katrina Takuma's work, she did this piece called The Spanish Devil's Darling. And what I love about this is that it's so tribal, and it kind of has that Aztec type feeling to it in the graphic that she has on the right of the piece. But then there's this influence of this compound creature of like this man slash other entity that's really cool, and it's got a tail, and it's quite, again, interfering into whatever is happening. Has anybody else got a kind of a view on Katrina's work?
I just like it because I think it's nothing like my own, and I feel like I went a bit literal. I kind of went down a road of like, how does this affect us? Where Katrina is much more like abstract in the concept, where you might not go blackout straight away, but it really makes you think, and you really have to delve deep into the piece and look at the layers. Like it's just really beautiful. It's really detailed in its way, and I think because it's so different to my work that I really enjoy looking at it.
Yeah, there was a line that she has in her statement, and it reads: "The featured geometric shapes and the overall linear nature of the piece represent structures of violence and heighten the sinister divisive character of the work." I think that itself is just, it's very apparent in what's happening, and when you're reading that with that image, it just, you can see it even clearer that there is such a sinister thing that's happening, and that kind of brings us back to the kind of what's happening on a global level, what's happening from the people who have the power and how that's manipulated, and how that brings us back down to the crisis at an even more severe level. Maybe that's not what she's talking about, but that's kind of what I'm interpreting anyway. And then we have the work by Saoirse O'Sullivan. Caoimhe, would you like to talk a little bit about what you feel is going on there?
Well, I know Saoirse's work kind of personally because my mom actually bought a piece, so it's hanging in her house. And I love the vibrance and the fluorescent colors Saoirse uses. They're so happy. And even if it's kind of a slightly melancholy scene, there's this kind of happiness that's coming through in the way she portrays landscapes. So to see her work in black and white, I think is really interesting, and just see that tonal shift. So you're taking away the real vibrancy from her work, but it becomes something completely different. And it's really interesting to see how that shift happens. And I think that with a lot of the paintings, we really see it, because I don't think as many of their sort of paint in just black and white. Like, we're a really colorful bunch, so it's really interesting to see how they do go into black and white. Like, I think I'm so used to doing it in photography that I always kind of play a little bit with black and white and adding a bit of grayscale and things like that. So seeing paintings go into it is really interesting. And hers, I think there is a melancholy to it. It's like this lonely road, and you have the electricity wires, and there's this small bit of kind of like, it's so quiet while it's happening. And I know it's a brighter day, but like, how far is that brighter day from us? Is it that long road away, or is it where we're standing?
Yeah.
And you mentioned the color and things like that, and when we see a sunset or a sunrise, or just the appreciation of just the light, there's a desire, yearning for that. But when you see something, a landscape in black and white, there's almost an understanding of its like peacefulness. It's very calm, but as you say, melancholy, and it's more looking at the structure and kind of just there's a stillness.
And also, this one was a very interesting one to process too, because the strict sharp shapes underneath didn't require, as I mentioned earlier, this half-tone dot to construct the gradual tone, but the sky, the softness of the sky needed that. And interestingly, in the became fragmented because of the half-tones. They're quite fuzzy and fading out and almost dropping away and less secure. So usually when you see a wire against a landscape in a painting, it's this lovely, sharp, definite line that works and functions and it's doing its job. But in this case, it's sort of softening away and fading away into the background, which I found really interesting on the first pull of the print. I thought that surprised me so much.
Yeah, no, it's
the prints are gorgeous though. I was lucky enough to see them, and what Rob was talking about, like the half tone with them. So when you because I got to see a lot of them up close, seeing that half tone when you're really close, it looks a little bit different as if when you're standing back. So I just think these pieces are really beautifully done by Rob and all of us, but like the way Rob has done it. So when you stand back, they kind of become a fuller picture. And then when you go closer, you can see all the little parts that make it up. And it's kind of like I feel like you're getting a bit of like a 2-in-1 kind of thing. And I know with painting and stuff that is there anyway, but it's just really beautiful that you go up and you can see the detail of the printing press and everything that went through it, and the laser etching. They are absolutely gorgeous.
No, I think that's a really good place to kind of continue this discussion on the greater picture and encourage people who do experience the work firsthand, or do only experience it in the digital world, to just make a comment on what you think, what you interpret from it, and how it connects with you, because that's where it continues now. We have done the work in the making, and we've put the work together, and we're going to bring it to as many places as we possibly can across the world. But now it's the audience's turn. It's their job now to bring it to themselves, and for them to interpret what they can from it, for them to kind of use it as a point of reference or a point of learning, for what it is that we need to do to overcome some of the issues that we're dealing with, but also just to show that this is a language tool that we have done together as a collective to share this genuine concern, and also to share just an idea and how powerful even art is and what art can do as a language universally, and how what we've achieved, I think, through just this very simple concept or this very simple word of blackout, and how that has, as you've just all heard, sparked so many questions and so many ideas and thoughts in so many different perspectives, but also still achieving the same principal thought of that we need to make sure that we are doing our best for the world, that we are doing our best for society, for our climate, and for our future generations. So thank you very much to all 13 artists who have contributed to that, and who have made what this is. And it's really exciting that we get to share this with you in the couple of different locations that we have already set up, and the future ones that will be announced soon across our collective's social platforms. But I suppose it's important to mention now that we are starting our debut exhibition in Jelgava, Latvia. And I hope Christina, who's probably listening to this, isn't saying that you pronounced it incorrectly, but it's Jelgava, Latvia, on the 9th of December at 1 p.m. their time, which is EET. So 1 p.m. their time, and that will be streamed on all of our social channels. So if you would like to tune in and see us launch our very first physical exhibition, I think you can hear the excitement in my voice. It would be an honor to have you there, virtually as well as physically. So do tune in via Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever. We'll have the link there, and if you're on our mailing list, you'll get an email with a link to it as well. So do tune in and share it in our success, and share in what we have created. And please, with the word share it with all of your friends and family too, because as you can see, this is a message that we want to get out there. We want to get out about the themes that we're discussing, but we also want to advocate the power of art and the power of creativity, and how important that is, and how much it can make a difference. So that's Latvia, and Latvia will be running until the 2nd of January. So if you are in Jelgava, Latvia, the beautiful old town that is in the old townhouse there, it will be on until the 2nd of January. So do join us and see it there. You will also be able to see the full collection at www.nuacollective.com, where they will have the listing of all of our artworks, and also the opportunity for you to buy the series. So there will be 5 editions, and only 5. You can only buy this collection as one piece, because this entire piece tells a story, and we need to make sure that that narrative is kept together. So there are 5 pieces. You already heard this has traveled the world already, and it will continue to travel the world in its showcasing. So there are only 5 pieces available for sale. They will be on sale through our website. And if you want to get in touch with us, if you've an inquiry about that, you can do so through hello@nuacollective.ie or .com. And you will be able to find out whatever you want from that. And I'm very happy to oblige and answer any of your questions that you have about that. But there will only be 5 editions. There will be the initial one, which will be edition number 1. Now, the thing about edition number 1 is that you won't be able to have that for a year, because it will be traveling the world. But the best thing about that is that it will have traveled the world. So you will have a signature from all of the different venues it has been at. You will have the pieces themselves, obviously, and you will have the special limited edition signed book that we will have as well, that will be included in that box. For edition 2, 3, 4, and 5, they will also be available for sale, and will gradually increase in price from edition to edition. So the edition 2 will be the first one available for sale, and that will be available for sale from the 9th of December. So we'll give you more details about that through our website. And as I said, if you need to get in touch to find out more about that, do contact us at hello@nuacollective.com. So that's the information about the exhibition, and that's the information about our actual collection and how you can get it. the next bit of information I have to give you is that book. So that book features, as Rob has spoken about, there's like little anecdotes that are aside all of those pieces. And so you can have it as a lovely coffee table book, and it is available in 2 sizes, and you can get that delivered directly to your door anywhere in the world. So you can order that through our website. You can order that right now. It's on www.nuacollective.com/blackout. So go and buy that now. And all of the proceeds that are profit making from that purchase go into the costs that are involved in making this tour. And it is exciting that we are touring the world, but these things cost money. So if you can support us all, buy the book, and that will help us. And if you'd like to make a donation, there is a donation there that will help us also cover the costs. So thank you in advance for that. Finally, I have a very exciting announcement to make. We are going to Estonia. So that is our next stop. We're going to Estonia, Tallinn, Estonia in January, from the 16th of January for 2 weeks. And through that exhibition, there will be workshops throughout it in the space. You'll get to see all the pieces, and we will be launching our Nua Blackout documentary that will be projected there as well. So that is uberly exciting. So if you can't make Latvia, you can come to Estonia. Flights are very cheap at that time of year, because nobody wants to go anywhere in January. So get on that and come and see us in Estonia. So after all of that talk, I hope you have enjoyed everything that we spoke about this evening. Please help us spread the news by sharing it across your social channels, by inviting people to see it through your friends and family. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you very much to Caoimhe, to Carol, to Rob, and to Christina for joining this podcast this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, be creative, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.